I'm Liz Walker, and welcome to another special edition of From the Heart, the online healing community of Can We Talk Network. We have talked to some fascinating people this past year on From the Heart, and at the top of that list is the Jordan family, representing a religious dynasty of grace and healing from Chattanooga, Tennessee. The father, Bishop Ternay Jordan, and his two sons, Reverend Ternay Jordan and Reverend Jamichael Jordan. Talking to them was a delight. Take a look.
Welcome to all three of you. What an honor to have an incredible family like your family on this program. So thanks for joining me, all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Liz, for having us.
Oh, this is such a thrill for me. Now, as ministers, you all three, as ministers of the gospel, have made kind of community health your life's work. So my first question is to all three of you, but I'll start with you, Pastor Jordan Sr. How do you define community health?
Well, I believe community health, we believe that even ministry is holistic, that we have to deal with the heart, the soul, and the mind. And so community being a group of people who are living in the same place or who have common interests and values and a sense of fellowship. So it has always been our goal with ministry. We believe that's what Christ did. He operated in community. And so we believe that our church is not about what happens inside the church. That's where we come together, but what we do outside the church. We believe that if a church is in a community, it ought to infect and affect everything around it.
Mm-hmm. Do either of you sons have anything to add to that? Because that was said pretty well.
I think you hit the nail on the head. But absolutely, I think it goes beyond individual struggle. And I think it looks at the overall picture, right? When you have a healthy community, you have people who are a part of that community. I think it affects your health. I think it's your physical health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, even your cultural health. Everybody needs somebody in a community where they can relate to and be supported through that. So it's really a support system, I think. A healthy community is a community that supports.
And Pastor Ternay Jr., I was going to ask you a little different question. This has always kind of been the role of the Black church. Don't you agree? Or do you think that role has kind of grown in time?
Well, I do think that it's always been the role of the Black church, but I also believe that it's continued to evolve and it's evolving on a daily basis. And I do believe when you talk about community health, one of the things that comes to mind is the word community. That's common unity, right? It's common unity. Everyone is common, right? And we have to unify. When someone is sick, we have to be the antidote for that person, for our neighbor, and we have to work together, whether it's a psychological sickness, emotional, or a physical. We have to come together because if one hurt, if we're in union, one hurt, we all should hurt. And I believe that that's what coming, unity looks like.
That's powerful, powerful. Well, the most incredible way to approach this subject, of course, is to start with your family story. In 1993, your family was involved in a violently traumatic incident when Ternay Jr. was shot in what we usually think of as one of the safest places in the community, the neighborhood Y. We have a little video of your documentary that you did on that. So Micah, can you roll that video that we have?
After piano practice was over, we went and we sat in the lobby on the couch that my parents told us to wait on whenever we finished piano lessons. And I remember sitting there waiting on my mom to pick us up, and we were looking out of the window and some kids started arguing.
There were two gang members. They were fighting inside of the YMCA, and they went outside. They locked the doors behind them. And as me and my sister waited, they began to fight, and they pulled out guns. They started shooting at one another, bullets just flying through the air.
Thing I remember is two gunshots ringing out, And I remember jumping up and I ran to the left where other kids were. And when I turned around, TJ wasn't behind me. And so I yelled for TJ and he didn't move. So I ran back to go get him. And as I grabbed his arm, another shot rang out. And he turned around to look at me.
And then gunshots.
My sister was telling me to move. As soon as I turned my head to look at her and about to get up, the bullet came through the window inside me and struck me in the head. And all I remember is getting real hot. I didn't know I was shot at first until this one guy was saying that I was shot in the head. And I remember crying, falling on my knees and praying and crying, telling God not to take my life now.
I can't imagine going through something so horrendous. And of course, there are many approaches we can take to your experience, not the least of which, TJ, Ternay Jordan Jr., that you survived this. But I wanted to put it in context of the subject. How does something like this hit a family? How does it change your family? How does it change relationships? I'll start with you, TJ. How I know it must have impacted everything. I wanted to start with
yes, I think we kind of lost you for a minute, and I
go on.
Okay, I think I may have heard what you said. I don't know if we're glitching or anything. I believe your question is, how did it affect our relationship?
Just the whole family, when something like this just changes everything.
Well, I believe. Okay. Well, of course, it changes the dynamics in a lot of ways. Of course, that's inevitable. It's something that you never expect. It's something that you're going to have to make sure that you find a way to move through that and to go through it. I think we all, there were some changes within all of us. My story is my story, but they have a story regarding it as well. And I think there were changes that happened within all of us. But more than anything, rather than change, I always say that change is something that you can change from or go right back into. But I believe that there was a sort of transformation in our family. And I believe that transformation, it happened in a way where we realized, listen, we all we have. Tomorrow is not promised. We have to support each other. They supported me. They supported one another. And we came together. And especially because we were a first family, a church family, people were watching and looking at us to see, how do we come through this? How do we walk through this? Especially when Pastor Pop, when he was preaching and he was teaching and kids were dying every single day, he was encouraging those people. And I believe what it did, it transformed us to let us know that we as a family, we have a bigger picture. It's so much bigger than us. And I think that it transformed us to really walk the straight and narrow and really focus on God.
Pastor Jordan Sr., what would you add to that? I know this changed your life.
Well, I agree with TJ. The irony of our situation is that we had landed in Fort Wayne, Indiana from Chattanooga in 1989 in the middle of the crack epidemic. And there were young kids dying every day. Our church was an empty church, but it was in the middle of the community where kids were dying. And I had already buried and funeralized 12 kids and had been really the face and the focus of working with the community and violence with our kids. The irony was our son became a victim. And for me personally and for our family, as a pastor, I had, during those funerals, encouraged 12 families to be strong and that the Lord would see them through. And so now I knew the whole community, but especially those 12 families were looking at me to see if we believed what we had told them. We as a family had just pulled together. My wife and I stood strong. She supported him. Jermichael, I think Jermichael was about 5 years old at that time. He was in the, he was shopping with his mother when the incident occurred. But when it occurred, he looked up at his mother without knowing anything and said, "Mom, come on, let's go. And so he felt it, even though he wasn't there, and being as young as he was. Yeah.
So, Jermichael, this you were too young to exactly remember the incident, or what do you remember about that?
I can tell you stuff that happened 30 years ago, but I can't tell you what I ate for breakfast yesterday. That is as vivid as any other night. But yeah, I remember that night. It was one of those things to where, as my dad said, just being in the room with my mother and mom, I feel like something bad is about to happen. I believe that incident really did bring our family closer together. As TJ said, is when we realized that family is what we have. We're this little bubble, this incubator. And our job is, number one, to be each other. But I feel like it built our faith. And I really feel like it was one of the incidents that pushed our family to the forefront, which had its pros and cons, if you ask me. But I do believe that moment really solidified our faith, really who we were as a family in that community. And it really just, watching my mother's faith, my father's faith planted that seed to where I am today and what I'm today, real.
Right. Wow. And I didn't mention your sister's name. That was your sister who spoke in that video, correct?
Correct.
A beautiful young woman. So it affected all of you, but brought you closer. Do you think, Pastor Jordan Sr., that your sons were always called to ministry? Do you think that was kind of a fait accompli when they came into the world?
I'm not sure that's what they desired, because neither did I. I felt like I had been called into the ministry at a very early age, but I told the Lord I was too smart. I could do a whole lot of other things. And so for 20 years, he let me do that. I believe they can speak for themselves, but I don't think the call is what they wanted. But they did answer the call, and we're very grateful they did.
Well, let me ask both of you. Did Ternay Jordan Jr., I'm having trouble getting all these names together, forgive me, but I'm going to work on it. Ternay Jordan Jr., TJ, do you believe this was kind of a call to you, or did you struggle with becoming a pastor?
Absolutely. I struggled with it for years. You know, I ran from it because I've seen too much. Watching dad, watching my grandfather, I've seen too much and dealing with people. And it got to the point where it was challenging for me because it was like I was always walking on eggshells, couldn't make a mistake. Yeah, all eyes on you. And I didn't like that pressure. And plus, there were other giftings that God gave me that I was passionate about that I wanted to delve into. I wanted to be a great recording artist and travel the world, do music, produce music, write music. And I was able to do that. But that was what I desired to do. However, God's plan is always bigger than ours. And God said, okay, you want to reach the masses? I'll let you reach the masses, but it's going to be in a different way. And so, and that's how God called me into ministry. And so I've been in it for, oh my God, since 2007. 2007, I can't believe it. And it's been very rewarding. And also, I'm involving as a minister every single day.
Absolutely. Jermichael, I know that I've traveled to the EJI with you, Equal Justice Initiative in Montgomery, Alabama. So, and I know you work with young men. Was this a difficult call for you into ministry, or is it like your brother? You kind of struggled and then you accepted it.
Funny story. I believe God. I know God called me when I was 5 years old, and it was one of those things that I watched my father and my grandfather do. So it was one of those things that you watch from afar and you admire. It wasn't until I became a teenager that I realized this is as cool as I thought it was. I can do a whole lot of different things. Because I realized the pressure that came with it. Before, I was just imitating. It was something that I was used to. But when I became about 15 or 16 years old, I said, you know what? I want to get as far away from this as possible. Because like TJ said, I had seen what my grandfather had to deal with, what my father had to deal with. And so it was just those pressures and those expectations that I really didn't feel like I wanted to pursue. Mm-hmm. However, it wasn't until I became a young man, about 27 years old, that I just couldn't run from the call anymore. He has showed me so many times that this is where I'm taking you. This is where I want you to be. And of course, I kicked against the prick. I tried to run from it, but when he has you, he has you. And so I'm in a place now where I've accepted that. I accepted my role of who I am, what God has me to do. And so I'm just excited where God has me.
You all represent a model of a family for all of us, as most ministers do. But let's get back to this issue of fathers in our community. Uh, Many people draw a direct line, most people draw a direct line between community violence in Black communities and a lack of healthy fathering. Would that be something the three of you agree to? Is it more complicated? Now, where would you enter that debate, that discourse? And I'll start with, I always start with the elder. I'll start with you, Pastor.
That must be me. I think there's a direct correlation. Over the last 15 years, I have funeralized over 107 young people, mostly African-American males. And the one thing that all of them had in common for the most part was the absence of a male positive role model or father in their lives. And that is really why we started Stop the Madness 30 some odd years ago, to provide that community of men. Lord laid it on my heart to pull some men together and call them men of vision, finding them men that had vision to helping of fathering and mentoring young men. And then finding men who had no vision and trying to spend time with them to give them a vision for family and community. So I believe absolutely there are a number of things that play into violence in our community, but I believe that a large portion of that is the absence of a positive male role model in their life.
It's a big problem. I don't want to oversimplify it. So how do we begin? I mean, the Pastor Jordan Sr. says you brought in men for what I'm assuming is mentoring, and then you also worked with men to try to give them a sense of whatever it takes, I assume, to be a father. That's a big job. What's the first step? How do we get in the community? How do we begin to change behaviors and reach hearts of young men?
I'll jump in and then I'll throw it to these guys, because they've spent their lives with Stop the Madness and mentoring programs in the schools and in the community. But I have a saying, is that you cannot be what you cannot see, but you will be what you see. And usually what happens in our communities, even where violence is concerned or negative behavior, it is because that's what a young person grows up and sees. So the number one thing, I think we have to identify who we are as humans, as men, as males, how God created us in the beginning and then gave us responsibility for dominion in the earth. And the word responsibility to me means being able to properly respond to every situation that you encounter. And so until we can get men to understand who they were created to be, and then teaching them how to accept responsibility, I think that's a great starting place.
Gentlemen, would you like to add to that? Because I have another question to follow up.
Yeah. I think the greatest gift I've ever received was being able to watch this guy, my father, do what he did in the community. He continues to do in the community. I know for a fact that the reason I have a heart for young people, the reason I've gone into schools to mentor, the reason I became a teacher, the reason I do the things that I do for my three sons is because I had an example to show me. And when you talk about the violence that is happening in our communities today, I do believe a lot of that comes from the lack of a role model or the lack of a father figure. Surely all of it have mothers. And we know that majority of the time it's the mother that is the nurturer, the one that's taking care of it. But there are some things that a man or a boy cannot learn unless he learns that from a man. And I think having my father as that role model steering me in places where I had opportunities to go down the wrong road. I always had that voice in the back of my head say, hey, don't do that. The name, right? It's not just about you. You have a legacy. You have a grandfather, a father that you represent. And so I think for me, I think in order to curb what we see in our communities with violence, we have to give them an alternative. First, to recognize that there is an issue, right? They have to recognize that there is an issue, and then we have to supply them with people who can deter them and speak life into them as they continue to try to move and grow.
Did you have something you wanted to add to that, TJ?
Touche to them. They did a very good job conveying that.
Let me ask you this. In your community, it sounds to me like your church is really effective in doing this as the body of Christ and as individuals. But I'm wondering, a lot of churches, let me not say a lot. There are churches that are struggling to reach the community because young people are not listening to ministers. They're not coming to church. How are you even begin to get the kids that you need to get to? Anybody?
Well, I think one of the things that we've been privileged to do is to do community outreach. That it starts there because those are where the young people are, right? So when we go out and we do community outreach, one of the things I learned a long time ago is that vulnerability is everything. Vulnerability is everything. It's hard for young people to come to church because church people are not vulnerable enough to open themselves up and say, I have issues too. I struggle just as well as you do, right? And I always say this, vulnerability is putting yourself out there with the risk of being laughed at, judged, talked about, walked away from, ridiculed. That's a risk. But vulnerability creates relatability. So if an individual cannot relate to you, then you can't have a relationship. And that is the thing that I think has been the problem with the church. Transparency, I tell that all the time. Transparency creates credibility. When you open yourself up and you say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I've gone through, this is what I've overcome, you have credibility. So if someone says something about your story, they're automatically going to say he or she knows exactly what they're talking about because they've been there. And so when you can be vulnerable and transparent and open yourself up to those you're trying to reach, I believe that will draw people to you because they say, listen, I can relate to this individual. They understand me. I understand them. And I believe that has been the contradiction of church is that, listen, I've already done there, been there, but I don't relate to you. And I think that is the problem that we have.
Dr. Liz, I think the key, and to sum up what TJ, meet people where they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Church has been guilty of unlocking the door and say, come to us. No, the role of the church is to go where they are and meet them. And as TJ has mentioned, be transparent and vulnerable and put yourself out there for them. So it's not to invite them to come into us. Mm-hmm. But we should leave and go out to them.
You mentioned two things, vulnerability and transparency. I wonder if that's not also an issue between fathers and sons, not in your family perhaps, but in other families. So we can talk about the most extreme trouble situation, but just in general, would you say that notion, because my father was a minister and I can't speak for my brother, but to me, he was this figure that was just kind of beyond, he was always in the pulpit. He was perfect. I didn't know. Now that was back in the day, but I didn't know any vulnerabilities from my father. And certainly he had them. Do you think that still holds in many preachers' families, anybody's family, anybody?
I know it does, but it never has been an issue for us. Okay. My father was a very gifted, respected pastor in our community for over 40 years. I'm still pastoring his church and passing the baton from him through me to these guys. But he was always a father. And I think both of these guys will be a witness that in our house, in our home, we were just parents and hopefully friends when they allowed me to be.
Right.
Is that
Right.
let's hear it.
Yeah, I don't know about my friend part. I think he just became my friend about a year or two ago now. But I will say that vulnerability piece, that's one thing he never hid from us. I can always say my father never tried to be Superman, even though he was. He never put that persona on. The first man I ever seen cry was my father. He let me know it's okay to cry. It's okay to be with your emotions when we live in such a culture, right? Men aren't supposed to cry. You aren't supposed to show your emotions. You aren't supposed to open up and talk. My dad was very vocal, and he had to be compassionate, not just for the community, not just for the church, but he brought that back home toward us. And so even as I raise my children, raise my boys, I'm really big on that emotional intelligence, being in touch with your emotions. How do you feel? Let's talk, right? A lot of men don't talk in general.
Right.
So I think you could talk to your father or somebody who you look up to and be able to share and be open and get a real answer, whether you like it or not. I think that's beneficial in the long run.
Yeah. TJ?
Yes, I concur. I believe that as far as Dad being our father, he's always been vulnerable. He's always been open and transparent. And like he said, the first person I ever saw cry was my father, our father. And that, I remember the first time I saw him cry, I can't remember. I thought something was really wrong, but I didn't know it was his passion for people that he started weeping for. So one of the things that I've seen through his vulnerability and his transparency is his heart for people, right? His heart for people. And because things were moving so fast as we were growing up, I didn't understand it. I didn't understand his heart for people. But the more I get into ministry, the more that I minister to people, the more that I see the state that our people are in, I'm now weeping for them. I'm crying those tears. And now I understand. But if I did not see that growing up, I would not be able to understand the way that I understand now for the heart of people. So I've always loved his vulnerability. We talk about any and everything. You know, he'll bring things up and share his heart with us. And he's saying, yeah, look, I'm your dad, but I'm a man too. You know, I'm a friend too. And so, you know, so just the fact that he can call us friend, you know, fathers don't call their sons friend. You my son. I'm your daddy. You do what I tell you to do. But he calls us friends, and we call him friend as well. So yeah. So he's been very impactful with me with his heart and passion for people.
There's so many lessons to learn from what the three of you say. You know, you always hear people say, or I have, my father never said, I love you, but I knew he loved me. Now that was, again, that might be old school. That might not be what it is now. But have you all heard that statement from your friends or from people you talk to?
Absolutely.
Why is it so hard for I'm going to talk specifically about Black men, but I think it's probably all men. Why is that so hard?
I think it's the stigma that we have it all together. I think it's the stigma that says that the responsibility, he already told you the definition of a man is his ability to respond. And sometimes men don't have the words to express how they feel or what they think, right? Men are more logical. Let's just get it done. Women tend to want to talk it out and explain. Men says, hey, this is the issue. This is the problem. I'm done with it. I think when you're comfortable and you're comfortable with who you are and who God created you to be, you're safe in that place, it makes it easier for you to be able to talk and say, hey, I'm hurting, I'm vulnerable, or I apologize. That's one thing you don't hear men say is I apologize. One of the greatest lessons I ever learned was from my father. After an incident, I think he had just lost his temper, which is totally normal because I do it today. He had lost his temper, but the next day he comes in the room and he sits me on the bed with tears in his eyes and he says, hey, I want to apologize to you, man. You shouldn't have heard that or seen that. Will you forgive me? And I think at a young age, it really has helped me with my parenting now because my three boys will take me. But then I feel real bad about it.
This is so beautiful. This is really, listen, I wanted to thank you guys, but we want to hear from those people who are out there. We think we have a few callers who may want to join us for this conversation. Maybe we can respond to them. So Micah, if they are there, why don't we let that first caller on just to talk about your relationship with your father or anything relevant to the things we've been saying. Are you there? I don't hear him, Micah. Is the caller there? We try to do so much with this show. We might as well be on a network. We could replace one of those TV shows, you know? But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Micah, we have our caller. Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, please.
Hi. Thank you for this incredibly important topic. It was really good to hear some of the things that have been said. It's definitely heartwarming. I just wanted to call in because this is a topic that's important to me. It's also a sensitive subject in my experience. And so, you know, a couple of things that I was thinking about in terms of, you know, fatherhood is I definitely believe that, you know, young boys benefit from having a strong quality relationship with their father to grow into well-rounded men. And that's just important on multiple levels as some of what I've heard today. But I think one of the ones that feels the most important is being able to model the behavior that the fathers want to set as it relates to principles and values. You know, as you know, there's a saying that I think it's Maya Angelou that says is, you know, people will never remember what you tell them, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And so it's important for, you know, the first kind of point of contact that young boys and just young children see, for them to feel loved and feel cared for and have their needs met, and being able to just see the values that's the first part of contact is their parents. And so I think that's important as it relates to a father. You know, I also think one of the things what people leave out when they discuss fatherhood is something specifically in the Black community that is somewhat it's not a fixed title, because many people in the Black community play a parenting role. And oftentimes we see mothers be positioned in places to have to play a role as fathers. I don't know if not from a gender standpoint, but have to be both parents, which is unfortunate. But I think fatherhood could also be other men in the neighborhood, in the village. You know, many men can play the role of a fatherhood. But what I think doesn't get enough attention is what I've been experiencing is being stepfathers. And I think stepfathers, people often will say, you know, oh, it's the same thing. But I'm not sure that's the same. As someone who's been privileged and blessed to be the role as a stepdad, you know, and I have 4 of my own biological children. And it's, you know, I think it is different than raising than it was the role I played with my biological children and some of the things that I learned. But I think stepdads play a really interesting role. And there isn't, I didn't have, you know, when I grew up, my dad was not around. He was around. I didn't have a father steady in my house. And that was something that affected me. So I had to find other men to kind of look up to. And there was a part of my life where I often looked up to the wrong men. And that had led me down a certain path. But, you know, then I was able to transition in my life, and there were other men and people in general, men and women, that were able to kind of offer me some a different direction. And when I became to be a stepdad, like I felt like everybody, some of the, some of the advice I got was like, oh, it's just the same as being as a real dad, and I agree to that to an extent, but it is different, specifically when the biological father is still around, influencing. And what I try to communicate is, to my son is like, you're blessed, man. You got two dads. You got two dads that are in your life, pouring love and healing into you and guidance. And I think that reframing was important, but I think it's important to talk about the role of stepdads in their life. And I also play a father. I also have a granddaughter, and so I'm in her life because she needs that guidance, and my son's just, for a variety of reasons, just not available for her, and so I've stepped up to play that role. And I won't keep you all long, and I really appreciate the time to kind of come weigh in this incredible, important topic. One of the most crucial lessons that fatherhood, or what my father taught me, I think it's twofold, is that, my father taught me pain, the worst kind of pain. And that was one big lesson. It forced me to want to, when I became a dad, like, what I did not want to do to my children. And I'm incredibly intentional about that as a dad and a stepdad. Is like, there's certain things that I will never do for the treatment. I don't know if the treatment's, but from my experience as a son. And so that's one of the things. But I also think one good thing that I also learned from my father, that's a kind of a both bittersweet, what I learned, because it helped me and me being a father, the pain that I experienced, but also, like, my older brother my father is not his. You got to forgive me too. This is a sensitive subject, so I'm not just fully articulate right now, and it's somewhat emotional. So I'm sorry for sounding a little scattered here. But my older brother is not my father's son. But he's my father. So my father is his stepdad. My father raised him since he was little. And one thing that I'll say is, like, and it's kind of weird, and I'm saying raised them. It's weird, and it's without getting too much into my own experience, but the treatment, like, I never seen my father, when he was around, treat my brother any different than me. And he when he was around, he always, I didn't even know that my brother wasn't like he was my half brother until we were adults. And that was kind of shocking news. And I think that's one good thing that I can draw to being a stepdad, is like, between my biological children and my stepchildren, is like, I don't change. And one thing that my children will probably say is that, one of my values that I feel like that there was no rule book or no instruction manual on being a father, but something that I feel is important to me is, what my job is to provide, to protect, and to offer guidance. I feel like that's my first line. I've said this, like, I don't want to be like I'm not your friend. I'm here to do this. But if I happen to be your friend in the meanwhile, that's good.
I'm going to interrupt you just because you're saying so much that we want to unpack some of this. So I don't want you to go away, because I don't want you to think I don't want to hear you. But you've given us so much to discuss, caller. So please stay there. And Micah, if you could bring us back, because this lesson of pain was really a fascinating thing to talk about. I could see that this caller really wanted to share, and I didn't want to cut him off. I wanted to respect to respect him. But what do you see this notion of the lesson of pain? Is that inevitable, or is that just in some ways? You guys are all experts on this subject. What do you think?
I think pain gives us our resilience. I think it's not good for us to believe it. I'm blessed to sit here with my two sons and us to talk about our relationship. We realize that this is not the case in most of the men's lives that we deal with. I think that's why we're so passionate about it. We were blessed to have both of my sons know their grandfathers, and they loved and got much from there. But that is not the case in most of the people's lives that we deal with. And we understand that it is pain that gives you your resilience. It's being able to talk about it. It's being able to process it. And then being able to take those, as you can see behind TJ, he says story to message. That's one of the programs that he runs, and one of his platforms. The key is to take that pain and tell your story and pull out the nuggets and throw away the bone. Throw away the bones, but take the meat from your life story and journey. And it's amazing. This young man said, the greatest thing that I learned was the pain.
Yeah.
Not to allow that kind of pain to be projected on my children.
My son, exactly.
That's what it's all about.
That was a powerful testimony
Very
that
much
this
so.
young man just shared with us. And I didn't want to cut him off because it was so powerful. And clearly, this is a subject that we need to talk about more, fathers and sons and what we leave with. I think we have another caller. Micah, if there's another caller on there, can we get him on? Could you share if you're there? Hello? I think we have another caller. We're trying to get him on now. It's just the idea of giving people the time to tell a little bit of their story. Are you there? Well, if we have problems, Micah, you can tell me what I should do. Should we wait a minute or just go on? So, I'm sorry?
I think he said he got disconnected.
Okay, so he got disconnected. Then we'll just come back to us and finish this out. But the caller that we did get, I was trying to take notes from all of what he said. So Micah, if you just bring us back, we are going to round out and close out the program. There we are. But it's clear to me that we need to have conversations. That's what Can We Talk About is about. That's what I'm assuming the story to message is about. Having gatherings or having one-on-one so that we can just release some of our own stories to grow from. So here's my last question for the three of you. What is the characteristic, first of all, to the sons? What is the one characteristic or the strongest characteristic about your father, and you've touched on this a little bit, that you most admire? And I start with you, Jamichael.
Yeah, I'm gonna go first. For TJ take all the good stuff. I would say his faith. I take that his faith, watching him go through many experiences and situations that I would have took the average man out, but knowing that even though he took his bumps and his bruises, he keeps on going. And even as I look at my life, and sometimes days where I wake up, I'm like, God, I give this to somebody else. This is too heavy. I always have that image of my father who never gave up when he had more opportunity, more reasons to quit than I've even experienced that. And so think his faith to know that God is going to take care of whatever I'm experiencing, even to take risk when other people want to stay safe, right? I think knowing that no matter what I do, if I have God and I have faith, I can get through anything. So I admire that about him, and I think that's what I'm going to carry as I continue to pass to my children. No matter what you go through in life, if you got faith, if you got the ability to wake up and you got breath in your lungs, you're going to be okay.
Wow. Okay, TJ, can you top that?
No, that's a good one. I wish I would have went first and took that one, but since I'm going second, I'm gonna use something different. I would say his leadership. When I tell you he's a phenomenal leader, it's some really hard shoes to follow. I've seen him lead in some very challenging and difficult times, but when I think about leadership, it's that word ship, right? It's that ship. When you're on a ship with people on the cruise ship, you got a lot of people on this ship and they're heading in one direction. So he leads you, but he leads with you, right? He don't lead you and say, go there, do that. Let me walk with you. Let me talk with you. And I'll lead you all at the same time. So though I'm leading, we're still journeying together. We're going to get you to your destination and I'm going to be there with you. I've seen him lead when he didn't want to lead. I saw him lead when people walked away. I saw him lead when he was down, despondent, and depressed, but he led in that way anyway. So I think that's where along with the faith that Jermichael mentioned, I believe leading with faith is what that characteristic that I definitely am enamored by. And so it's his leadership.
That's beautiful. Okay, Elder, I'm going to give you the last word, Reverend Dr. Tanae Jordan Sr. What is it that you most admire about each of your sons?
When these guys were younger, I would take them out and get ice cream cones when they did well. They've done well. I'm going to get them an ice cream cone tonight. They're both phenomenal fathers. They are both phenomenal fathers. TJ has a 12-year-old daughter, and she is an incredible young lady. And to watch them interact and he lead his family, his wife, and his daughter with so much love and compassion, I admire that about them. Jermichael has 3 young, intelligent, handsome, rambunctious sons. Okay. One of them is 7, the other one is 5, and the other one is 2. To watch him interact with those boys and lead them and support them and encourage them with the responsibilities that he has, but he's constantly on the basketball court or at school or on the football field. I am incredibly proud of my 2 sons and my daughter. I mean, she is quite a young lady also. We tried to raise her to be strong enough to not have to have a man if she couldn't find a good one, but to be feminine enough to be a young lady, and she's doing that quite well. And that's because all 3 of these kids have a phenomenal mom. And while I was out leading others, we worked as a team. She was constantly there for the children. So I'm incredibly proud of my family. And I know that these guys, leadership roles that they are assuming, much like my daughter who leads a community organization, a nonprofit called Launch, where they are creating young entrepreneurs. They are all pouring back into the lives of people, and I just love them for that.
Well, I just want to say to the 3 of you, thank you so much. And to Pastor Jordan Sr., you and your beautiful wife have done amazing work. And here it is. The fruit that you have borne is really, really rich and full. So thank you for sharing with us because in this world, there's so much bad stuff going
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
It is really uplifting to be inspired by those of you who are doing it right. So thanks for joining us. I hope you'll come back. I'll think of another subject so I can get the three of you back, okay?
Sounds good.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Okay.
you.
That-
God bless you all. And thank
God
you
bless
guys
you
for
as well.
joining us tonight. We are going to be here as often as we can with From the Heart. So join us again. Have a good one. Take care and be safe, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Now remember, in 2026, we're going to continue our healing conversations on From the Heart at noon, twice a month. We'll keep you posted on when that begins, but we want you with us because together we can all heal. Thanks for joining us, everybody.